Hi Kris and Neil, it's Alina here. Great effort for putting Tennis Pro show. Hopefully you're doing good and staying safe. Take care.
Hi everyone, to all the coaches out there, hang in there, we'll get through this, and I cannot wait to be back on court just as much as you guys, that's for sure. So just sending positive, good vibes to everybody, and yeah, have a wonderful day, week, and before we know it, we'll be back on court. Bye!
So welcome to episode 3 of the Tennis Pro show. Thank you so much to Alina Svitolina and Johanna Konta, two of our favourite WTA players, for giving us that shout out at the start.
Okay, so this interview, I got a chance to talk to Rob. Kris was, we're totally different time zones, and Kris was fast asleep in the small amount of sleep that he requires for the insane amount of work he's doing. But he was asleep while we were doing this interview, and so I'm going to go ahead and ask a couple of questions, and we're going to, on the backside, we're going to talk a little bit about it, and then come back into this fascinating interview. And I know Kris, that you've already seen the interview, and I know you got a lot out of it, and we're really excited to kind of dive into this.
Yeah, I sent Rob a message the day after, or the day I heard the interview, proclaiming my undying love to him, because he's already one of my favorite people in the world. The guy is super cool, has a great opinion, and is so passionate about the topic of the coaching world. So for me, it was a real treat to watch.
All right, hey, well, let's dive in. He's worked with pros on both the WTA and the ATP. Those pros include Sonia Mirza, Frank Danzovic. He's guided Alex Wozniak, the Canadian, to 21 in the world. He's most known for his work with Lucy Safarova, guiding her to a finals of the French and semis of Wimbledon. She's got doubles Grand Slam victories. And he has also worked with Dennis Shapovalov. As a player, he is no slouch. He's got an NC2A title. He's been ranked 460 in the world. And he's played Davis Cup for Canada. And we're thrilled to have Rob Steckley. Rob, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, boys, for having me.
Is there anything in place to compensate tour coaches right now during COVID-19?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that's like a unified discussion, because like if we were to discuss this in length, it would be a gruesome discussion amongst coaches, because there is no security with the coaching, and that's what I guess challenges coaches, to do better. But at the same time, there's always that worry, and I feel when I'm on tour, I can feel the conversation, the weight of that topic, because you're only as good as your last win. And, once you kind of take a couple W's, you're good. And then those L's come in just as fast. Sudden, your topic to getting fired. And that's not what everybody wants. And so the weight of that conversation can go, in length. But I think, having something in place for coaches is probably the future, but we're probably still far off from that, just because everybody has to be, together and unified, and really has to be in sync with that discussion. And I just don't think the tour, in terms of coaching, is on that playing field, because it's just an individual sport. So everybody's pulled, whichever way. And so there is a discussion that can be had. And I think that would be something that would be of great benefit for most coaches. But I think we're still, a ways in time before that happens. But I think that this type of pandemic, is going to help the discussion, because what happens, for most coaches when they're not in a fortunate situation where, their player isn't making money and they don't want to pay. And that's the truth of it. And the reality of the situation, even when they're doing well, it's a discussion that you have to have with the player. And it becomes, a super strategic, personal type conversation that is not pleasant. I've had them, but it's something that for sure everybody wants as a coach, to be able to have that type of security.
So for me, it's so cool to hear Rob say that we need to have these conversations. He uses the word unifying in there, but for me, the key word that came out was gruesome. Yeah. He said that it would take some gruesome discussions, which shows the magnitude of the job at hand, in terms of we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations, because we really are talking about ripping up a model and building it from the ground up again. Right. So for me, I think it's good to have someone acknowledge that. But the other thing that was crying out from that section is just how cutthroat being a tour coach is, in terms of you're only as good as your last win. That there are that horrible analogy, or that idea that he talked about, which is you are the topic of conversation when it comes to being fired. If your player is having a few losses in a row and a bad slump of form, it's your job that's on the line, not theirs. So for me, it really underlines this idea of we need more security, that people have a feeling that there's not so much time pressure. And you could use the soccer analogy that we have over here, where managers can be fired, after 10, 12 games. The difference is they're on a wage and they get huge compensation if they get fired, which is, so this is exactly the type of idea that we need to try and start the conversation with in tennis, is how can we create almost a wage for a coach? And also, if they get fired, it's not the end of the world. They should get compensation. If they've done a good job and then the player has a slump, there should be some sort of financial package to see them over.
Yeah, and we have the same thing here in Canada with hockey. Coaches get fired all the time, but they have contracts. I really liked when he started talking a little bit. You peeked a little bit behind the curtain about that conversation you got to have with the player around compensation and how tricky that can be. And I love the fact that he shed some light on how uncomfortable that can be based on the player's success or not success, how you're getting paid. It just seems so murky and tricky, and how you got to navigate that scenario, for me, was something that I've always wondered about. I thought that was really fascinating. And again, I mean, you said it so well there, that the lack of some sort of structure leads to those kind of scenarios. It's just so tough. Let's keep going. We that's the next question.
Yep.
I mean, there's more during a layoff like this. There's more talk about unionizing coaching. If there was a coaching union, what would you like to see in place?
I think first and foremost, it's like, we're fortunate being from Canada and we have healthcare. But it's what happens when that discussion, comes about that you want to retire. And, you for some successful coaches, you might have enough to retire, but there's something that needs to be set in place that has, if you've spent the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years out on tour, you would need some sort of, back end plan that's going to be in place that allows some sort of security for, a type of pension type thing. And there's nothing in place for that. And that's what is crazy to think, because on one side, here's the truth is, if you can, and I'll speak for myself, if you're successful enough, you can make a lot more money while you're doing it than the most secure jobs. But then when you're not working, or if you decide to stop, there's nothing in place. So I think that's what the challenge is. You know, you spend years out on tour, and there should be something in place because you sacrifice a ton. There's no family, and that's what I'm going through right now. Is the balance between trying to, you know, be the best father, but also the best coach. And I found, you know, the first 10 years of my coaching, I dedicated everything to, you know, life on tour, but then there is nothing after that, realistically. So if you don't, you know, secure a spot in the coaching world where you're going to get hired again, and you start to lose yourself a little bit, there's nothing in place, and then everything can fall apart. So I think those are discussions that need to be had in terms of having some sort of security, because I hear a lot of, you know, whoa, I'm slipping again. Hey, anything's accepted in COVID. You know, it's like
that's right, man.
upside. It doesn't really matter as long as the content's there, right? But
right on.
yeah. So yeah, just to sum things up, I think that some security on the long end would go a long way. And I know from personal experience that if I were to spend the next 5 to 10 years out on tour, I would want to know that sacrifice was made for a good reason, and there was something after that. Because, you know, at the moment, it's just literally as much as you can produce in current time, and then there's nothing after that. And trust me when I tell you that you're only as good as your last match. And I'm going through that process of like making sure that family is first, but at the same time, when I'm out on tour, the job comes first, and I'm trying to find that balance. But if I didn't have a family, I would be out there doing more. But it's like, when you have a family, it just becomes more complicated. So I think that, you know, the conversation that needs to be had. Absolutely.
So for me, Neil, the big gut wrencher there was this struggle between being the best father that Rob can be and the best coach that he can be. And we all know the selfish nature of professional sport. But for me, that's a real life scenario there, where we know tour coaches have to go for weeks, months, maybe away from their families. And of course, when you're on the job, you need to do the best that you can do. But at the end of the day, you know, the values change when you have a family, and family should come first. But it's interesting that Rob is talking about this idea of committing, almost sacrificing, I think was the word that he used, 10 years of your life on the tour. You want to know there's a reason for that. And again, it comes back to this idea of us trying to find ways of exploring security, so that, you know, one job leads to another job, and so on and so on. Are there any analogies or comparisons you can think from other industries?
Another world that I'm involved in is acting, and I was lucky enough to get in the union, and the acting union is quite powerful. There are different tiers to that union. I think it could be a starting place for coaches. I recommend you just Google ACTRA or the acting union and learn a little bit more about it. But it could be a starting point for tennis coaches. And I know we've had some feedback. There is an appetite for coaches to get more involved and talk about a union. And so it's something I would recommend people look at, is that model.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Let's dig back into Rob. This is too good.
Right. What advice would you have for a young coach coming on, wanting to get into tour coaching, wanting to do it full time and be in a position like you're in right now, working with some of the best players in the world?
I love that you asked that question, because that's a genuine question that I can relate to. And not many people, you know what? Not many people ever ask that question. And I'm so grateful that you would bring that, you know, I think to the forefront, because, you know, for me, it was a lot of soul searching at the beginning after my tennis career. I didn't know which way to go. So I think, to break it down as quickly as possible, I would say that you have to find a direction of what type of coaching you're going to go into, whether it's high performance, tour level, the private club sector, youth, whatever it is. You have to really make sure that the focus is honed in on that. And then once you have that, you got to be at the right place at the right time. You have to constantly be knocking on doors. I was fortunate because I came from a decent playing background, and I had a lot of opportunity. But I'll be honest, it was like instilled in me from a young age. There we go. To constantly search for more. It's never enough. And that type of attitude led me to really pushing the boundaries in terms of like searching, whether it was, I was doing a little bit of country club, a little bit of high performance, a little bit of Tennis Canada, like supreme high performance, private, and all at the same time. And I got an opportunity from one of the stems to go through Tennis Canada, which led me to the tour, which was unexpected, but then I found myself. And then from there, I strongly urge anybody that's looking to do that to make sure that they plug themselves in to as many people as possible, to make sure that they network really, really well, to become a familiar face. So it's by being yourself, but truly just finding ways to network and not be afraid to get out there as much as possible, because that truly is what it is, and that network of people, it's funny because you'll hear that ring. It's like, who's that coach? And if that's that conversation that's had, maybe you've done your job, but maybe if it's that guy that's wearing that pink shirt and that shirt right there, his name, wasn't that Rob? And then, he did a good job, you get good references, and then it just kind of spirals from there. And then you create a wave of hopefully good results. And so that's kind of what I've always done. I was confused while I was playing. So it's like you make that wave, but then you get confused. And then as you get a little more mature, it kind of becomes a little more clear. So.
Wow. How excited was Rob that you even asked that question? That was amazing. He became so much more animated. I think I'm going to copy this, getting close to the camera when you ask a question you're most passionate about. But he's bang on in terms of young coaches really need to cut their teeth doing a little bit of everything, and you'll never know when an opportunity opens itself up. And I can speak firsthand about that. I went through this when I worked in Scotland, and Judy gave me so many opportunities to go travel abroad, working with our best juniors, and I was taking them to various different tournaments. It's amazing how all of a sudden people start to know your face. And it might be, to start with, using kind of Rob's idea, is that it's the Scottish guy again. Hey, this is the guy from Scotland again. And then they get to know your name, then they get to know your reputation. So work hard, cut your teeth, try a bit of everything, and then see what fits you best. And then you will create opportunities yourself through hard work, but also just getting your face out there and networking as much as possible. And I think it was really cool how you naturally swerved into this piece that you're about to speak about on the perception of the coaching industry. So let's dig in on that.
It's just rare to hear. I mean, that's why Kris and I wanted to start the show, is to have honest conversations about coaches and some of the challenges we face about professionalizing the industry, about the image of the industry that we, a lot of us fell into it because we're ex-players, or, the perception of the industry, I take my girlfriend or fiance over to their parents' house and they go, "Oh, you're a tennis pro. Oh, well, when are you going to get a real job?" And
Right.
And that's always kind of grated on me a little bit. And it's like how we got to change that attitude and find ways to, like you say, find ways to get some sort of pension going, or healthcare, or
Yeah.
you know, some sort of union where there's some sort of protection going on for tennis professionals, because it's a naked, you know, there's, you know, Kris has got a great stat, 99% of the coaches in the UK are all contract. And I don't think it's quite that high in Canada, but
That's the truth of it. You know, it's, you know, when you're in that industry, when you're really, you know, trying to become international, it's contract. But you know, we all sign up for that. So you know, I made a choice at the very beginning. Even when I was playing, I didn't take instruction. That's probably one of my downfalls. But it's like, you know, as you start to get a little bit more mature and you start to understand, it's like, if you're really that type of person, I urge the coach to really be themselves, because, you know, you can fall into that rut of wanting more security, which I can honestly say I've never wanted. I don't care whatsoever, because I've really trusted, you know, that my voice is my voice, and, you know, what I should have done and could have done with my playing career, I'm going to make up for with my coaching. So, you know, I was really passionate with, you know, finding myself on the tour. But I think that's why, you know, we'll come full circle. But that answer is just figure out as a coach where you want to be coaching, whether it's teaching, educating, or coaching at the highest level, and then find that path. And I'm going to say this on your podcast, and hopefully you air it, but don't be afraid to be yourself. Even if you wear no shirt and coaching like Nick Bollettieri, that's truly what coaching needs to be seen as. You know, it's like, it's the individual that's coaching. You're not following a format, because there's so many players that get caught up. You know, they have different personalities, and I'm assuming you can attest to this. It's you know, there's a format. People think, you know, there's 6 kids, all the 6 kids need to, you know, file a line and do the same thing. Yeah. It's not like that at all. And so if every coach is following that order and thinks that they need to do that, then the special kids get weeded out in a sense, because we have to punish them. And so I don't take 6 kids. So I've you know, really, you know, conformed to a formula where I take the special ones that are the special ones, and I enjoy working with that. And it's by being yourself, because you can relate to those special ones, if that makes sense, you know?
So for me, this was my favorite section from Rob, because I could relate to it so much. I think it's so important to be brave enough to be yourself when you're a coach, and not just be conformed to what you think the industry norms are. And I can really understand where he's coming from. I've had the finger pointing a lot over my career in terms of almost like being different. And again, if I wish I'd spoken to Rob there, I remember very clearly being at our British national championships when one of our players won. Well, we used to win all the time in Scotland, but one of our players won the under 15 boy singles, and I deliberately kept wearing my Aussie rules kind of rugby shirt, my cork hat, my khaki, my sandals, you know, because I didn't want to be the normal all whites, all England kind of perception that he mentioned. So for me, this was a real message. But I think the key thing I'd like to emphasize to coaches out there watching this is that to be yourself, first of all, you need to know yourself. And Rob actually talks about that. You don't know yourself really until you're probably in your late 20s.
Amen.
So figure that out, be comfortable, and then try and fix or attach your natural character and personality to whichever sector of the tennis world that naturally fits. So if you want to be the best 10 and under coach in the world, be that. If you want to be the best recreational adult coach in the world, be that.
Yeah.
So be whatever you want to be, but know yourself first.
Yeah, exactly.
And you naturally take it into a great topic here, talking about fear.
one of the big reasons you stand out is you said the word fear a couple times, and you don't have fear of being yourself and doing something outside of coaching, your videos, for example. And that really comes through, and I can relate to that you don't have to be all in and be this serious coach. I have a feeling though that when you're on court, you can be a really serious guy.
100%. And that's where that fear part, comes into play, because we, I think internally I have those conversations all the time. Did I need to put that video out, or do I need to crack that joke, or I don't? And then at the end of the day, truthfully, I say, if I have to think about those conversations, I don't care about doing this job. Like, I'm going to work at the grocery store if I have to. Like, I'm just going to do exactly what I got to do. And as I've gotten older, I really, really value the information that I've gathered and the sense of who I am. And it's come with working with some amazing players that have given me the opportunity to really understand who I am. And they've given that because, 10 years ago, I was really second guessing what I could bring to the table. And as I work with, tons of people and just be myself, and them saying, I have not heard that, but it's the same thing, but you're just being yourself. And that's, I think, where the power comes. And I've always had those conversations where they haven't been public. So I think this is probably one of the first times I've ever, come out, and this is a perfect platform with the coaching is, if everybody can really take a stance for who they are and not be afraid of wearing, the same colors and saying the same thing. And, because that's what, history has always been. Take, for example, COVID and Wimbledon. I don't know how many years I've been there. It's all white. I've never worn all white unless I felt like wearing all white, and if I don't get let on the grounds, I come in through the back door, like, and all the players feel the same. But it's like, it's the coach's mindset that puts that in the player, and the player feels like they need to be more serious. And then there's, the curios that comes out, which is the newest, and like the McEnroes, and they have the color, but then they're looked upon different. But how many, and I'm sure you can agree with me, do you know how many special people there are, like the curios, that just maybe get killed or crushed too early, or because they're misunderstood?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
totally.
totally.
And so and like the coaching system really needs to favor like individual coaches that understand and are passionate about, like, that one individual, and the rest, if they conform, they do it, and that's what fits, the mold there, then that's perfect. But there always needs to be more coaches that can really understand those special kids, rather than feeling, that they need to conform to what is, the norm, and that's it. Because I really do feel, and I have my ear to the ground, with the youth and what's coming, and it's just a pattern where there's a lot more individuality. There's so many unique types of personalities. And if we always, go to the easy answer, you're not working hard, we'll find a way, right? It's like, find a way. And maybe it's just because you're too old fashioned as a coach, and then you don't understand. And that's where I'm passionate about. And that's why, I love the fact that you're doing this, and I I love the type of information that, can get out to the masses, hopefully with coaching, because I find that that's where the tour understands, they're all about themselves. They don't care about anybody else. It is what it is. Like, if you want to wear these t-shirts, make your own, nobody cares. You know why? Because if you win, it's a bonus, but when you come, what I find in Canada, or like anywhere where you come into I guess a mold, and that's where you become judged, and it shouldn't be like that at all.
I know Serena's coach just came out with a statement saying, unless we switch models, tennis is really going to struggle. If we don't talk about it now and make a move now, when is that going to happen? And if we don't, maybe there needs to be a merge of those two tours before a union of tennis professionals can be born. I don't know, but
and if anybody knows, it's truly Patrick, because Patrick's a good friend of mine.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I respect him on so many levels. He's so passionate about the sport. He's such a good businessman, which I lack. and I see him, and so when he's talking about those types of issues, I actually really listen in, because he would know. He's the first to start bringing private events and start doing that type of stuff, but which I'm so passionate about, because that's where I've always been set. Like, it was 10 years ago when I came in, always thinking about those ideas, thinking, I'm not sure why tennis is so separate. We have this idea that it's ATP, WTA, there's no private event, there's nothing that caters to, anything, with unfamiliar territory. It's always, the same. And it takes something like this, which is no surprise, because I've had these types of ideas. I've had conversations with Patrick about this type of stuff. Like, it was like 2-3 years ago that we were talking about private events. Why wouldn't we make it a little more rock star? Why don't we bend the rules? Why isn't there something separate to where we want some showmanship, like a Curios and all that type of stuff? Is it a separate tour? Is it a branch of the tour? So these are conversations that I've had. And I still kind of, I always have when I'm out on tour, but the idea of making it, a little more unified for sure, and then kind of breaking the rules a little bit and having some fun and seeing where that goes. And I think that's where we're at right now, where it's extreme measures, and starting to see, maybe there's something else that needs to be had, because, what happens if there's no fans for the next 6 months, 1 year, whatever it is? And how do we make that interesting? Are they the same rules? And so that's what Patrick has taken upon himself to do, with his events at his academy there.
So what a man Patrick Mouratoglou, I can get the pronunciation right, is. Patrick, for me, is a breath of fresh air in the tennis world, because he brings vision, he brings business acumen to the tennis world, which is badly needed, as we both know. And he's such almost a pioneer. He's not he's not afraid to come to the tennis world with an unpopular opinion. He's brave, and he'll commit to that decision as well. And for me, it's another indication of how in the tennis world we shy away from people that want to be entrepreneurs and come to things with a different slant. And it comes back to this contracts, I'm going to call it an epidemic in the coaching industry, where so many people are contract. We have this dog eat dog mentality, instead of actually trying to think of ourselves as competitors, but standing on each other's shoulders. And if you use the Apple versus Microsoft idea, they're only strong because of each other. They don't want to succeed because the other one fails. And I was really interested to hear your business model from your last coaching job. Could you give an example of how that brought you together as a team?
Yeah, we're coming back to it because it was such a unique scenario. We were all paid a salary, we were getting benefits. They were even kicking some money into, our retirement. It was amazing. And because we were pooling all the revenue from all the lessons and splitting that revenue up, and one guy went down with an injury, for example, or was sick, we would see a little hit, but we just didn't take any lessons off. We all worked so hard for each other, and we were really a team. And that was such a unique scenario. We all wished for each other's success because it all benefited each other. And I would just love to see that model happen more in the industry. It was very unique. First time I'd experienced it. And I just can't say enough good things about that model.
Yeah.
Thanks again for doing this. Is there any, if somebody wants to learn more about you, where can they find more about your amazing videos that you produce, or what's next in your career?
I usually do Instagram. I tend to get lazy a little bit unless I'm out on tour, but Instagram, and or I'm a real person. You want to know? Just send me a DM.
Wow, Rob Steckley. I mean, that was, this is the kind of conversation that I was hoping that you and I can do. I'm thrilled that you enjoyed it, that you got a lot out of it. I hope our audience gets a lot out of it. And yeah, great first guest on our show.
Yeah, and stay tuned for future guests. We have we're hopefully lining up. I would say a leader in world coaching and a household name. I don't want to give away too much at the moment, but he has verbally said that he will come on. And he has some great opinions about the state of tennis. Yeah, we'll release that when we know it's 100% in the can. But yeah, thanks very much for tuning in. Share this with all your fellow tennis pros, and spread the word that we're actually trying to do this for you. We're genuinely trying to create a bigger interest around the world of coaching. So thanks very much for tuning in.
Thanks a lot, guys. And the Tennis Pro Show at shaw.ca. Hey, tell us what you think. You got any ideas for us? Where should the show go? Please let us know. Thanks, Kris.
Thank you. Another high five. Eesh. We're getting closer.